If you are wondering if your child has a sensory processing or sensory integration disorder, please keep watching this video as I share with you a few warning signs that can let you know that it's time to go speak to your pediatrician. Hi, I'm Michelle, and this is A Common Life. I have 5 children, and 2 or 3 of them have sensory processing disorders or sensory integration disorders. And that can make life very difficult at times. So I thought I would share with you today just some of the warning signs that maybe give you the idea that maybe you should be talking to someone about it. And I would highly recommend that you speak to your primary care physician, your kid's pediatrician, about this. I am not a doctor. I am not an occupational therapist. I do not have any type of degree. All I have is the experience that I have gained from having children that have SPD. So everything that I say comes from my perspective, from my life with my boys. So you need to kind of take that into consideration as you are listening to this video. I don't want you to think that I am some kind of expert. I'm just a mom who has kids with sensory processing disorders. First of all, when your child is a baby, you may already see some signs. So do they have a difficult time going into noisy, crowded places? Do they like to be bundled up or, in like a baby burrito all the time? Or do they hate being in a baby burrito all the time? It can be extremes. It can go one way or the other. Some kids love that sensory input, so they love being swaddled and they love being in noisy places and they just do well with that. Other kids cannot handle it. They can't handle being all confined like that. They want to be free. They want to be able to move. They don't want to be around loud noises. They don't want to be touched all the time. So these are things to look for. If you have been around babies, if you know what a quote unquote normal baby, there's no normal anything, but you know what I mean. Someone who kind of goes, the middle of the road. They seem to be a fairly happy baby. They're content a lot of the time. They don't cry that much. They don't have eating issues. That's what I would call a quote unquote normal baby, but all babies are different. But if you have a child who is, anywhere from 3 months to 18 months, and they just are miserable a lot of the time, and you haven't looked into dietary issues or allergies or things like that, I would say look into those things first, because a lot of times digestion can be an issue. So if you've kind of figured all of that out, they don't have any digestive issues, they're just miserable, then perhaps they do have a sensory processing disorder. We did not realize that with our 4th child. He was just miserable all the time. So I took dairy out of my diet. I took soy out of my diet. I took wheat out of my diet. I did all these different things because I was nursing him exclusively to try to figure out what was going on with him, and nothing changed anything. He just cried all the time. He basically cried from when he was born until he was about 10 months old. He cried almost all the time unless he was sleeping or nursing. And so it was very, very hard. And so that's not quote unquote normal. A baby who is healthy, who is normal, I'm going to use that word again, they really shouldn't do that. They shouldn't be so upset so much of the time. So that was kind of a warning to us that something was up, something was not right. Another thing to look for is developmental milestones. A lot of times, children with sensory processing disorders just kind of don't really hit them at the right time. Sometimes they hit them very, very delayed. Not always, but some of the time. A lot of times when kids hit milestones and they're very delayed, that may be other issues. So I'm not going to say that that is exclusively a sensory processing disorder issue, but it can go hand in hand. Now your child is a little bit older, maybe they are anywhere from about 3 to 5, 6 years old, and they just get overwhelmed so easily. They have these meltdowns, which are not temper tantrums, and I am planning on making a video about that soon. They have meltdowns where basically they just cannot handle it anymore. They cannot handle the input that they're getting, they can't handle the stress that they're feeling, and they fall apart. To people on the outside, it may look like, especially because of the age that they're at, it may look like they're just throwing a temper tantrum. But you as the parent know that this is not a temper tantrum. This is not a battle of the wills. This is your child struggling. This is your child suffering because they just don't know what to do with all of the sensory input that they have, and they don't know how to handle it. So if you are seeing a pattern of that over several months, if your child is doing it once or twice a week, every other month, don't worry about that. That's just kids being kids. But if you have a child where this is just constant and where it is extended, where it is lasting for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and they're just screaming and crying and they cannot get themselves under control no matter what you do, they may have a sensory processing disorder. They may not be able to regulate their emotions. So that is the time at which, yes, you should be speaking to a doctor, because they can send you to an occupational therapist who can really, really help your child figure out ways to kind of deal with all of those things, how to not let themselves get so out of control that they can't kind of pull themselves back in. Now, with any child, when they are overscheduled and tired and maybe a little bit stressed, they won't behave the best way possible. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. But if you see that your child is doing that to the extreme, that may be a sign that they have a sensory processing disorder, because children with sensory processing disorders, or SPD, they thrive on routine. They thrive on regularity. That is what they prefer. That is what is best for them. So if you are constantly traveling, going from one place to another, and all sorts of activities, eating lots of different foods, waking up at different times, going to bed at different times, that is basically the worst thing that you can do for a child with SPD. It is just the worst thing that you can do, because they cannot regulate themselves with all of this chaos in their life. And so if you have a child who really struggles with that, try to simplify. Try to get a schedule. Maybe even put something up on the wall for your child to see. That way they kind of know what the day is going to look like. If they're in a classroom setting, then they probably have that, especially if they're in the younger years. So that's really good. Maybe talk to their teacher about how to emulate that at home, how to copy that in your own home. If you are a homeschool parent, you can obviously make schedules within your own home and show those to your child and help them kind of get through their day step by step. But one of the things that we have learned is that we just can't do everything. We can't do all the things that everyone else does. We cannot go to a big noisy concert. We cannot go to places that are super crowded, especially if our child is kind of exhibiting signs that they're not doing as well. Because what I have found is that sensory processing disorders kind of come and go in waves. Your child can do really well for a while, and then suddenly they just plummet, and everything is a trigger for them. Everything is making them melt down. Everything is making them yell and feel angry and feel frustrated, and they just can't deal with it. And then things will calm down, they'll do a little bit better, and then it will go down again. So that's one of the things that I've seen. There's kind of trends where it just goes up and down, and you can't do anything about that besides trying to keep your schedule as consistent as possible, make life as predictable for them as you possibly can. One thing that I have seen in my children personally is the extremes, the way that things are really, really good or really, really bad. And that may be the way that they feel about things, that may be their perception of things, or it may also be their behavior, that it goes from being perfect little angels to just kids that are completely falling apart. And as they get older, they see that through their own eyes, and they see that the world is either really, really good or really, really bad. Because I don't know if you've ever seen that video, but there is a video, I'm pretty sure it's probably on YouTube. If I can find it, I will link to it down below for you to see. There's this video of this kid who is walking into like a Walmart or something like that. And it's explaining all of the sensory input that is just coming at him and how it is so incredibly overwhelming for him. And you have to think about your child with a sensory processing disorder, that they are dealing with something that the rest of us who don't have that don't deal with at all. We don't even know these things are going on. Yeah, maybe we hear loud noises or other things, but we're not hearing every single little sound that is happening. My oldest son, he just hears everything, absolutely everything. He can hear like dog whistles, he can hear high pitches and low pitches, and he's just more sensitive, and he can just hear all these things that I don't normally hear. And I am sure that after a while, it's exhausting. You get tired of constant noise all the time. So if you can create a safe place in your home for your children, maybe just a quiet zone, a quiet corner where they can go when they just need some peace and quiet, then do that. If you have a child who is kind of sensory seeking, who likes those kind of things, well, then maybe you can offer them activities that are good for them. Maybe like playing foosball, which is kind of noisy and active and there's lots of sensory input, or sports, or lots of different things just to keep them busy, because they would really enjoy those and it would be good for them. And what those two things do, depending on the child, they help regulate them. They help make them feel centered. And that is one of the most important things about a sensory processing disorder, is that children have a difficult time feeling centered, just feeling like they're not falling apart all the time, because a lot of the time they're just trying to hold themselves together because they do feel so overwhelmed. So if your child is dealing with any of these things that I have listed in this video, I would recommend talking to someone about it. Definitely their pediatrician. You can ask their pediatrician to point you towards someone who can help you. Now that may be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or definitely I would recommend an occupational therapist to give them tools to equip them on how to handle this in their day-to-day life. Because especially if they are at a very young age, any type of tool that you can get for them to equip them for their future is going to make a huge difference, especially through those difficult preteen and teen years for them. And then especially again, as they hit adulthood and they have all of those extra stressors on them. So I would highly recommend seeking out some occupational therapy if your child really does need it. I have shared lots of other videos on my channel about sensory processing disorder. I will have a link to all of those at the end of this video and in the description box down below. Please go ahead and check those out, and at any time feel free to email me or comment on a video if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and have a great day.